Welcome to RWM Blue Water Ministries. I'm Bob Manook, your host, and today we're looking at suicide statistics in the world and in Canada. In this segment, we're going to do an overview of suicide statistics. Before I get into the stats, I have a burden on my heart that I need to share. I feel there are people out there who are watching this who know that you have made wrong choices and you are not happy about where you have ended up. You have hurt the people you care about because you have made decisions in the moment that you thought were best for you with no thought for the long-term consequences. You know you made some bad choices. Perhaps you've reacted and did some things you now regret. You feel as though all is lost. You are hurt and depressed. You feel hopeless. People's actions either tear down or build up in their life. If your life has been on a downward spiral because of bad decisions, it is never too late to start making right decisions. It is never too late to start rebuilding your life. The only thing between you, or between where you are and where you want to be, is a series of right decisions and intentional steps, heading in the right direction where you want to be. You do not end up where you are overnight, and you probably won't end up where you want to be overnight. It will take time and determination, but you can do it. Don't believe the thoughts in your head that say you can't do it, because you can do it. Ask Jesus for help and guidance. When this video is done, watch the next video called The Lie of Suicide and pray at the end. God bless you. Now for the statistics portion of this video. This worldwide summary I've gotten off of the internet doing a search from the World Health Organization, WHO. Generally, when reviewing statistics based on population, they are given based on per 100,000 people. That way it doesn't matter if you are comparing a country with 100 million population or a country that has 1.5 million population. It gives you a measurement when comparing based on 100,000. It is measurable. Here is one example, and this is looking at data provided by Wikipedia. Suicide accounts for 1.4% of all worldwide deaths. In 2008, the world data for suicide was 11.5 deaths per 100,000 people. So of course you multiply factor that based on what the real population is. But to break it down to make it measurable, per 100,000 people, 2008 was 11.5. In 2015, that number actually dropped down to 10.7 suicides per 100,000 people. This suggests that it is trending downward, but it fluctuates depending on the world economy, so it goes up and down. When comparing regions, in Western countries, male suicide rates are 3 to 4 times greater than female rates per 100,000. In other countries, male rates are 1.5 to 2 times female rates per 100,000. Europe is the most suicidal region in the world at 15.4 suicides per 100,000 people. While the Eastern Mediterranean is the least suicidal at 3.9 suicides per 100,000 people. Of course, this is comparing huge blocks of population within a region. In the data given for countries of the world, there are 183 countries identified, compared, and ranked. The countries were ranked by a combined male and female rate per 100,000 per population. columns were also provided with male rates per 100,000 and a column for female rates per 100,000 for comparison. So what that basically means is you got 183 countries. They compared the rates at 100,000 males and the rates for 100,000 females, and then the combination of that give you a total combination for the male-female rates. And it's that combination that's how they ranked them. So the latest world suicide rates are for the year 2016. The worst country in the world was Guyana in South America, listed at 32.6 suicides per 100,000 people. So that's the worst, and all the rest of the countries, all 183, the other 182 countries are less than Guyana. Now, some of these numbers get skewed because they're good measurements, but Guyana has a population of 773,000 people. Like they're only 750,000. They're not even 1 million people, but they have the highest rates of suicide per 100,000. The other thing to notice on this is that they're actually number 3 when you rate just the males. And the males are 46.6 suicides per 100,000. So, alright, so even though they're number 1 when you combine the males and the females, on the males they come out number 3. The second deadliest country for suicides is Lesotho in South Africa. They're rated at 28.9 suicides per 100,000 people. And note, on this country, it's the second worst country. This is the only country where female suicide rates outnumber the male rates. This is the number 1 worst country for females at 32.6 suicides per 100,000, compared to 22.7 suicides per 100,000 males. And the population of this country is only 2 million people. And generally they have subsistence agriculture and declining garment industry. The third country, the third highest suicide rate actually surprised me, because it's Russia at 26.5 suicides per 100,000 people. And even more surprising, it's the number 1 worst for males. If you do the measure just on the male columns, Russia has the highest incidence of 48.3 suicides per 100,000. And Russia has a population of 144.5 million, excluding the Crimea. Number 4 on the list, Lithuania, located in northeast Europe, Baltic and ex-Soviet bloc country. It has a population of 2.8 million at 25.7 suicides per 100,000. It's the second worst for males at 47.5. Fifth country is Suriname in South America at 23.2 suicides per 100,000 people. It's actually number 6 worst for males, behind Kazakhstan at 40.1 and Belarus at 39.3. So the next 5 countries is the Ivory Coast, which is 23 out of 100,000 people. Kazakhstan at 22.8 out of 100,000. Equatorial Guinea at 22 out of 100,000. Now mind you that they only have a population of 1.2 people, 1.2 million. Belarus at 21.4 is in 9th spot. And it's just south of Lithuania and north of Ukraine. That's got a population of 9.49 million. And then 10th spot, and I'm going to be honest again, I got surprised on the 10th spot. South Korea. It's got a population of 51 million people, and its suicide rates are 20.2 per 100,000 people. So I just got myself a little subnote here, because I would have thought, I went and compared to, South Korea's in the 10th spot, so I went and checked out where's North Korea, because North Korea is a repressive regime, and it's ranked 68 with a 10.6 suicide rate. That's worth coming back to in a bit. So I was recently in the Ukraine on a missions trip with our church. Ukraine is ranked 14th in the world with a suicide rate of 18.5 per 100,000 people. Ukraine is considered, when you include the Crimea, to be the largest country in Europe. It also is considered the lowest income and the second lowest GDP in Europe. It has a very high poverty rate and high corruption rate. Ukraine also has the second largest military in Europe. The male suicide rate is 7th at 34.5 out of 100,000. Female suicide rate is 81 at 4.7 out of 100,000. So, for reference sake, Japan, because we're not going to list all the countries, but I'm going to go down and show you some countries that kind of jump out. Japan is ranked 30th with a rate of 14.3 out of 100,000. Males are ranked 40th with 20.5, and females are ranked 25 at 8.1. So Japan is 30th on this list out of 183 countries. The USA is ranked 34 in the world at 13.7 suicides out of 100,000 people. Males are ranked 38th at 21.1, and females are ranked 42nd at 6.4 out of 100,000. Canada is ranked 72 out of 183 countries with a rating of 10.4 suicides per 100,000. Males are also 72 with 15.1, and females are 59th with 5.8. Even so, there are extreme sub-areas within a country or region, which I will conclude with momentarily. Just for interest's sake, I looked up Denmark, which many people cite as being one of the happiest countries in the world. It's ranked 89 out of 183 countries. It has a suicide rate of 9.2, so it is just under the 10 per 100,000. Well, here's another interesting one. China is ranked 103 with a rate of 8 suicides per 100,000 people. So I just randomly chose a few more countries to see where they placed. Turkey is ranked 116 with a rate of 7.2. Vietnam is ranked 119 with a rate of 7. Afghanistan is 125 with a rate of 6.4. Again, these are 6.4 suicides out of 100,000 people. Italy is 142nd with 5.5. Libya is tied with Italy at 142 with 5.5. Israel is 147 ranking with a 5.2 rating. Iraq is 154 with a 4.1. Now that I found that surprising. Saudi Arabia is 163 with a 3.4 rating. Pakistan is 169 with a 3.1. Azerbaijan is 175 with 2.6 out of 100,000 people. Syria is in the middle of a civil war. I mean, there's been a war going on there for the last 4, 5, 6 years. It's ranked 176 with a suicide rate of 2.4 per 100,000 people. The 5 countries on the bottom of the list are Jamaica, rated 179 with a 2 rating. 2 people committing suicide out of 100,000 people. Grenada holds the 180 spot with 1.7. Bahamas 181 with 1.6. Antigua and Barbuda is 182 with a 0.5 out of 100,000 people. And the safest country in the world when it comes to suicide rates is Barbados. It is 183. It is the very last country with a 0.4 suicides out of 100,000 people. So the bottom 5 countries with the lowest suicide rates are all in the Caribbean. So for a summary of my observations of the world stats, I would conclude the safest place in the world to be is in the Caribbean. In other words, relax on a warm island with a beach close at hand. But be aware that if you have emotional problems, they go with you if you relocate to the beach. So that may not be the answer. Poverty seems to be a factor that may contribute to suicide. I was told that people in poverty are so busy trying to survive that suicide is not a factor. But we do see in some poor countries, they do have high suicide rates. Mental health issues and suicide seem to be more problematic in affluent countries and societies, where people are more prone to compare themselves with others and find themselves lacking, contributing to their depressions. More of a factor than poverty alone would be poverty combined with alcoholism and male abandonment of families. Also, poverty combined with addictions is a factor. Another factor may be employment and societal stress. People trying to survive seems to be a factor in repressive regimes, where the incidence of suicide seems to be surprisingly low, such as Iran, Iraq, and Syria. I admit, I was very surprised by that. Let's take a brief look at Canadian suicide rates based on data from Wikipedia. You'll remember I mentioned Canada is ranked 72 out of the 183 countries with a suicide rate of 10.4 out of 100,000 people. Males are ranked 72 with 15.1 out of 100,000. Females are ranked 59 with 5.8 out of 100,000. Even so, these are averages that hide some extreme sub-areas within the country. So the rankings are based on averages between years 2000 and 2007. So the Canadian numbers here are a little bit different than the World Health Organization numbers, because it was addressed 2016. This took a 7-year period and averaged them all out. So we're going to look at the Canadian provinces and regions. These are the rankings and rates out of 100,000 people. Number 1, the region with the highest suicide rate in Canada is Nunavut, with a rate of 71. That means 71 suicides out of 100,000 people. And that's a blended rate of male and female. If you look at just the male rate, 113 suicides out of 100,000 people. Like, that's the highest in Canada. The female rate is 26 out of 100,000. So, number 2 spot, Northwest Territories at 18.66 blended. Male is 32, female is 4.99, so just under 5. Third spot is held by the Yukon at 15.3. Males at 26.8, females at 3.91, so it's just under 4 per 100,000. So those are the top 3 regions are the Northwest Territories. It's up there, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, Yukon. The northern regions that are sparsely populated and isolated. Okay, so that's all 3 regions. Now we hit the provinces, and number 4 on the list, I found this surprising also, was La Belle Province, Quebec, at 15.2 suicides out of 100,000 people. Number 5 was a surprise to me. It's Alberta with 13.13. And so in that blended number, 1313, male is 19.81, so it's just under 20 out of 100,000, and the females was 6.41. Now the thing with Alberta, okay, in 2008 it had an economic downturn, but these numbers are reflected in 2000 2007. Alberta was booming. So some of these things are, it's not poverty, I don't believe, in Alberta, although I'm sure there must be some poor regions, but I mean Alberta has been booming for the last 30 years with the oil and gas sector. And I mean, they couldn't find enough people to fill jobs. I remember being out there and seeing Tim Hortons drive-thrus shut down because they couldn't get anybody to man them. There was just so many restaurants that were only open part-time because they couldn't get enough help. Anyway, they were going through a boom, and yet, even through the good days, they were in 5th spot in all of Canada. Next was Manitoba, with a male rate of 18 and a female rate of 6.13. 7th was New Brunswick, 11.95. Then number 8 was Saskatchewan, 11.46. 9th was British Columbia, 9.73. So we just now dipped below the 10 suicides per 100,000. So we're at 9th at British Columbia. 10. Okay, so now we're moving out the East Coast. 10. Nova Scotia, 9.29. 11. Newfoundland and Labrador, 8.5. 12 was Prince Edward Island. So the whole maritime region, all the different provinces out there, all are collected together in these lowest rates. Prince Edward had 8.86. The last province, again, I'm surprised by Ontario at 7.86. That was the blended rate. Males are 12 suicides per 100,000. Females were 3.8, so again under 4 per 100,000. So the thing to note out of this now is Ontario has the lowest rates of suicide and also has about half the population of Canada. Note also that the highest rates are in the Northern Territories, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon, followed by Quebec and Alberta. Now, in all of that, then there's other subgroups, because you look at, they talked about the Indigenous, so in other words, our Native Canadians. The suicide rate among youth on reserves is alarming at a rate of 5 times greater than that of all Canadians. One reserve has had 1 suicide every 6 weeks since January 2013. Since 2009, there have been 27 suicides out of 2,500 residents. And then in the Inuit numbers, in 1984, Inuit youth suicide rates were around 40 out of 100,000. Now, that's 1984. That's 35 years ago. Just about. 40. That's a high number for 30-some years ago. Okay, in 2002, that rate climbed to 170 out of 100,000. By 2007, in a population of 30,000 that is mainly Inuit, 40% of deaths were suicides. Many of the 222 suicide victims were young, Inuit, and male. The one study concluded if we want to help the mental health of a lot of people who seek help, we have to deal with unemployment, housing, violence, and substance abuse. Excuse me. So that's all the statistics I'm going to look at. So here's the point. Suicide is not isolated to one ethnic group, one nationality, one religion, or one continent. Not even one socio-economic group. It does not matter if you are poor or affluent. It is a worldwide phenomenon, but that does not make it right. In the video posted right after this one, I discuss what the Bible has to say about suicide. The video is called The Lie of Suicide. The Bible describes an afterlife. If you or anyone you know is contemplating suicide, they need to understand the rules about entering eternity. There is a right way to do it, and there is a wrong way to do it. And believe me, it is an unforgiving procedure, so it is imperative that you do it the right way. Listen to the next video and give it serious consideration. This is serious stuff, and you are gambling with eternity. Now let me close just with this. You do not want to become a statistic, because believe me, you're better than that. So listen to that next video and seek out help. Suicide is never the answer. This is Bob Manook from RWM Blue Water Ministry, declaring blessings on you and yours. Till the next time.